Hey, good evening to you. I'm meteorologist Michaela Lucero. We are continuing to track Hurricane Ian as it's moving inland for portions of South Florida. It has passed the Sarasota area south of Lake Wales at the moment. A closer look at where we are. Sebring, you can see there, Arcadia. This is along Highway 17, seeing some of the heaviest rainfall at the moment. And we're continuing to watch it as it's slowly, very slowly progressing off towards the north. And we are already starting to see the outer rain bands of this storm system here on the first coast. Some of them are spilling up and along I-95. And here's a closer look at some of our far southern counties, places like Palm Coast, Palatka, St. Augustine, getting some of that heavier rainfall at the moment. Widespread showers across the entire region, Flagler County, Putnam County, into St. Johns County. Areas like St. Augustine, World Golf Village, you're starting to see a few areas where that rainfall is starting to pick up a little bit. Now, we know how this kind of works. If you've been in a number of these storms before, you know that you get really heavy rainfall and then it will start to lighten up a little bit, and then you'll get another one of those rain bands where you're getting that heavy rainfall and then it starts to lighten up again. So that's kind of what we're going through for portions of St. Johns County. Duval County, we're actually seeing a few areas that are getting a brief break in the rainfall. The downtown Jacksonville area just inundated with rain right now, very widespread showers across the region. A little bit further out to the coast, Ponte Vedra Beach, maybe just a tiny bit of a break in that rain, as well as areas south of Mayport. Nassau County, similar story there, getting a little bit of a break in that wet weather. And then our far western counties, a few scattered showers, but just haven't seen a whole lot of rainfall for many of those areas. Columbia County, Baker County as well. Union, the far western areas of Union County, not quite as much rainfall. Just starting to get a few sprinkles for portions of southeast Georgia, just south of Brunswick, Charlton, Ware counties. Just been a mostly gloomy day. Hasn't really been a whole lot of rainfall for that area, but we'll continue to keep you updated as that rain is, well, it's headed your way later on today. Rainfall totals. This is what we've been working with, at least for the last 24 hours. St. Augustine's the area that we've seen the most accumulation. About 1.25 inches. Palatka, just over an inch. Palm Coast, we're not getting readings from there. So I know that says 0, but that is not accurate. Our sensor must have gone down in that area. Gainesville, about 1/4 inch there. NAS Jax, getting over 1/4 inch. Wind speeds, these are current wind speeds right now. These are sustained winds, not wind gusts. Sustained winds, 41 miles per hour at Mayport, 28 at St. Augustine, 26 at NAS Jax. When we talk about wind gusts, it gets even worse. Mayport, close to 50-mile-an-hour wind gusts, 33 for St. Augustine, 38 at NAS Jax. Palatka reporting at 31. And watch as we go through Futurecast here, it's only going to get worse. As we go hour by hour, if you're out on the roadways tonight, especially if you're headed south along I-95, it is going to be rough out there. We are going to be seeing widespread showers, heavy rainfall for some areas, and very gusty winds. This model is predicting winds to get close to 50 to some spots, maybe even 60 miles an hour as the strongest winds from Ian moves into the first coast. This is saying 55 miles an hour for Palm Coast, 58 by about 2 a.m. on Thursday morning. Heavy rainfall does start to spill in, and then our model does start to bring the storm just a little bit further off towards the coast, and then winds do pick up once again once that passes through. So a very gusty day expected as we get throughout the day on Thursday, and then carrying over into Friday as well. And those winds, even though the storm might clear, the strong winds are definitely going to be possible. All right, let's get you over to Chief Meteorologist Tim Deegan, who's got some more details on where the storm's going.
All right, thank you, Michaela, and let's take a look. So here's the hurricane now, Category 3, so it is weakening. It's still powerful as a major hurricane. The forecast is for that weakening to continue, and then just before heading offshore as a tropical storm, and then heading northward and then even northwestward. Now, I know for some of you that have been around a while, certainly there is the concern, or at least I've heard the concern from you that it might boomerang back toward us after possibly strengthening. Even the new data and the new models coming in this evening continue to support the idea that it's going to continue on this motion, that is staying offshore, and then when it does go back ashore, maybe near about Hilton Head. Point number one. Point number two, that because of shear, that is strong westerly winds up at about 30,000 feet and some drier air in, that's going to help us as well. I'm going to talk about that in a moment, but let's talk about the rain, because well, here's the core of the hurricane, but because of the tropical inflow coming into, this is right about where the front is located. That's why we're having the nor'easter here, forecast nor'easter. that the combination of our nor'easter and then the weakening Ian heading our way is what's going to produce possibly as much rain on the northeast Florida coast, and pretty heavy for those of you over southeastern Georgia, as they're going to receive where Ian came ashore. We've been talking about that really all week long, and it still looks like it's going to verify that we're going to end up having some of the highest rainfall totals that Ian has to offer, because we're combining that with what's happening with our nor'easter. But you notice something? A lot of motion heading north, and if you look at the intense colors, they're not holding together. They're falling apart. Now, we think that those heavier rains will increasingly make it farther off to the northwest. But at the same time, there is some dry air trying to undercut some of this. And it's one of the reasons why, for those of you at least out toward the Swanee and the Okefenokee, we're not quite as concerned about rainfall causing flooding for you. So here's a closer look. I do want to explain why there's a hurricane watch, even though there's a tropical storm forecast to go on by. Hasn't happened yet. It's still a Category 3, but it is weakening for two reasons why we have a hurricane watch. One is, notice the cone is still touching our area. So although this is the official forecast, even now, let's say 24 to 30 hours out, this is the average error. And with all humility, because although this is the National Hurricane Center's forecast, in the past we've seen errors this far to the west. They've put a watch up. But you may be wondering, well, what about the fact that we're not forecasting a hurricane? Well, they also work on a 20% error possible in their intensity forecast. And so if it's 20% higher than this, then that would be a hurricane. Now, that would still probably involve the hurricane force winds staying offshore as far as sustained winds. But we've been showing you there could be some gusts pretty close to hurricane force. All right, so what's the other reason that this hurricane is going to weaken besides just the fact that it's going to be over land? Well, the same front that has dropped south of us, that's enhancing the rains and producing the nor'easter, has brought in some dry air. And although we're getting gusty winds out of the northeast, at the same time, those northerly winds farther to the west that are being drawn into the hurricane are still trying to bring in the drier air. So there's a real battle going on. The moisture is trying to increase from the northeast, but the drier air continues to filter in. And remember, the dew point is how it feels, but it also tells us how dry the air is. And to have dew points in the 40s this time of the year, we know that the ocean temperature is sitting at about 80 to 82, that's a big deal. And that drier air is now beginning to filter in, not dew points of 40s, but right now, even though the Gulf of Mexico is in the 80s, winds off the Gulf have brought the dew point in Clearwater down to 69. Now, it's just a minor thing, but it is something we're going to be watching, because if we continue to see that dry air filter in, it will actually choke off the hurricane. Now, it's probably obvious, okay, the air is drier, there's going to be less rain, but more than that is going on. Remember, drying air causes evaporation. Evaporation causes cooling, and these are heat engines. So it would cool some of the layers of the tropical storm, which is why by the time we make it to Thursday afternoon, not only is it weaker, notice how asymmetrical it is. No longer do you have this wet core. Nearly all of the significant precipitation is well off to the east, and then from the center off to the northeast. Very little on the south side of it. So that should both weaken it, but then also what that means is once it gets about a beam of us, we're going to see conditions improve here tremendously, and the wettest weather will head up towards South Carolina and North Carolina. So with all that said, that's why, although we're under a hurricane watch, our numbers haven't changed much, although certainly a significant event. The first high tide that we're going to be seeing how much widespread flooding there is will be the one just within the next few hours. Then we'll watch for Thursday afternoon and then for Friday morning. Because of these incredible rainfall amounts, we expect overall water levels to rise about 4 feet. That's an average. There'll be some variations as we go. Again, if you don't know the tides, these are the tides at the beaches and then working along the St. Johns River. So St. Johns and Flagler, you're going to have the most frequent gusts to about 70. You're going to have the most rainfall. Some isolated locations could be approaching 15 inches of rain. Clay and Putnam, heavy rains along the river, farther to the west, not quite as heavy. Nonetheless, we're watching Black Creek, and then here's how Duval looks. We'll cover some of the other counties next hour.